Okay, we are starting just a little bit early today because it's kind of a big day. So, we're going to talk about relative pitch. We've been doing this for 30 days now, and I'm going to talk about what I've learned from it and my next steps. So, at this point, I would say I do not have perfect pitch. I have not seen a noticeable increase in ability. I have been able to get a better sense of different tone qualities between individual notes. I haven't spent enough time on this to really know if perfect pitch is something that can be developed. But for anybody that thinks it's easy, for most people, I would say it's not easy. And it would take a significant amount of effort over a prolonged period of time. Now, since this is kind of what I'm doing right now, at least until I take a job somewhere else, maybe at a university, something like that, I decide to do that again. This is what I'm doing full time. So for me, it's worth it to see if perfect pitch can be developed. So I'm going to continue this. I'm going to continue it on my own. I'm not going to do live streams every day. But if I ever come across sort of a breakthrough, I'm going to come back and create a video and talk to you about my results. I'll probably check in monthly so you can continue to see whether or not I'm seeing any improvements. One of the things that I thought at the start of this experiment was that I'd be able to come in and just kind of do the experiments as if you weren't in the room. But I realized that's not really the case. I always go into teacher mode. And so I immediately start explaining the exercises because otherwise you don't know what I'm talking about. So I may be able to get some slightly better results when I do it on my own and just report in periodically, maybe with new exercises that you can just work on free. Do I think perfect pitch is worth it? That's the thing. I mean, I've been spending at least 15 minutes a day, bare minimum, working on these exercises, which, if you trust all the people out there that say perfect pitch can be developed, that's all you're supposed to need, just a few minutes a day. But the reality is that if I had spent that 15 minutes a day trying to improve my relative pitch, I probably would have seen better results with my ear than I did with a perfect pitch. Now, perfect pitch training is useful. Perfect pitch training can open up the ear for relative pitch, and that's great. But it's not going to be a replacement for somebody who doesn't have it natively. So if you're not born with it or develop it very early in life, it's not a good replacement for somebody that just has perfect pitch abilities. So my verdict is that I think that there's a type of perfect pitch that can be developed. I think it's going to be slower than somebody who's sort of born with it. And I don't think it's going to be the same experience as somebody with perfect pitch. But I do think that if you've already developed a really solid relative pitch, then maybe it makes sense to add perfect pitch to the list of things you're trying to accomplish if you want to constantly improve your ear. So that's kind of where I'm leaving this at. I don't think necessarily it's worth the time. That's what I'm coming to you with. And I've been a musician. I'm in my 40s now. I've been a musician for a very long time. I played in a lot of ensembles. I've acted as a composer. I've taught in the university. I've taught ear training for a very long time. I've taught other composers. There have been very few times in my life where I thought, hey, it would be nice to have perfect pitch. And it's more like, not it would be nice to have perfect pitch, it's not like I needed it, right? It was just something where, okay, I could see how knowing what this one pitch was could help me. Like if I'm working on a symphony, I'm audiating it, or I'm working on a composition, it'd be nice to be able to know exactly what pitch I'm starting on, because that could be useful. But other than that, I mean, you can just get a piano for that, because if you have a really good relative pitch, once you get that first pitch, everything else counts. You don't need it anymore. So we're going to do one last exercise. If you wanted to try and continue developing your ear with these perfect pitch exercises, I think it's honestly better to just go through the flawless course, because I integrate a lot of the stuff we've talked about into that course, but I do it in a way where if you're going to develop perfect pitch, it can help you. But if you're not going to develop perfect pitch, it supplements your relative pitch training. So I'm going to continue working on the whole tone scale for a while on my own, probably the next month, before I add any other notes. And then when I add a new note, it's probably going to be A, because when I was doing some of these early exercises, A just really stuck out to me. And it was a note that sounded very clearly like something that I could just recognize instantly. There was no vocal tension, there's no muscle memory, there's nothing else going on like that. I just knew it was A. So I'm going to go ahead and try an audio to C. You can do the same. We're going to do one last exercise today and see if things have changed at all. But first, I'm going to share my screen with you because we're going to use direct audio this time. Okay, get that C in your mind? Yeah, got it again. But you know, later in the day, I don't always get it. If I do it earlier in the day, I tend to get it right. So I'm not sure what that's about, other than maybe my ear's a little tired later on. So we're going to compare some notes. Just listening for some subtle difference. We make sure that you're able to hear this, make sure all the settings are correct. Should be okay. If you're live right now, let me know if you can't hear the piano. B flat and C. C and D. Definitely hear a difference there. I'm going to go back to B flat. There's no real pattern or logic here other than I'm playing notes to hear the colors, and when I hear them, I kind of go on to a different note, or maybe I want to see if I can remember a previous one, so then I'll play it again. I'm just kind of very much going with whatever feels right in the moment here. This is D and E. F sharp and G sharp. G sharp or A flat and B flat. Definitely hearing some differences. So now I'm going to do my doubles. I'm going to play two notes at a time and try and hear the colors within the harmony. Here are the two notes. Break it apart. If you're taking the relative pitch course, you know that we do this a lot. These are good drills for developing that tone awareness. We're going to talk about tone awareness when I'm done here and why I came up with that. G sharp really stands out. So the first exercise, you just do individual notes, you're comparing. The second one, you're taking two notes at a time, you're separating them. When you can do two notes comfortably, add three, then add four, add five, then add six. Start with consecutive tones. Once you're able to identify all these pitches, at least hear kind of a color, go ahead and use any six tones on the piano. So you gradually want to increase to that. So that's your second drill. Start with two, continually add. The next one is it's important to hear these in octaves because people with perfect pitch, they don't necessarily hear the octave register. And I came across this a lot in the university. I talk about this a lot, but I realize there's always new people, so it's good to repeat myself. So, question I got once was, how can you tell the difference between a major third and a minor sixth? It was like an actual question. And so at first I was like, well, I mean, the major, well, minor six, I guess. The minor six is much larger. Like you can't hear the difference. And so I played some minor sixes and some major thirds. Those are inversions of each other. And the student couldn't tell, but the student could tell me what the pitch names were. And so this is an example of perfect pitch that hasn't been developed so much that this particular student didn't even know they had perfect pitch until they started taking ear training in college. And that actually happens more often than you'd think. It's surprising, but it happens. And so, we had to work on special exercises for this student to develop the ability to hear where notes were in the registral space. So, is it a high note or a low note? I mean, that was how bad it was. And it's not bad, it's just that's how this particular student heard music. Okay. So that's one issue with perfect pitch. If it's untrained or maybe at a different level of perfect pitch, they can't tell if I'm playing a B flat down here or B flat up here or down here or here. Where most people can tell this note here is higher than this note, or this note is higher than this note. But somebody with perfect pitch can't necessarily, it's not a given that they can hear that. That tends to be one of the difficulties that they do have. And it can get hidden pretty well because they develop tricks to kind of pass their music courses because they start to realize that's their issue, but they can identify the notes. So that's one of the things that, is an actual disadvantage if you have perfect pitch. But I want to talk a little bit about tone awareness. And so I started to discover that certain intervals, even though they're the same interval, like a perfect fifth, would sound different in different keys. And if I switch keys on my students, they would have more difficulty getting the intervals right. Where if I stayed in the key of C, they could get better accuracy identifying intervals. So for example, I could play a major third here. That's a major third on the tonic. I can also play a major third here. That's on the fourth scale degree, or a major third here. Okay, so they each have kind of their own quality. There's C and E, F and A, that's still a major third, and G and B. So if we were to try and identify these, That one actually feels to me pretty stable. And then we go to F and A. It's softened somehow. And then we go to G and B. It's brighter. So now if I switch keys, I go to D major. That's the tonic. So you'd assume if we had some sort of tonal awareness that the C and E quality would match the D and F sharp. But they sound different. And then if we go to the fourth scale degree of D, G and B, obviously, they sound different than F and A. And then if we go to the fifth, we get A and C sharp. Sounds very similar to our G and B here, but it's different. So there's this tone awareness that I think a lot of people actually have. It's why you can sort of memorize what a song sounds like. And this is why they often recommend that if you are trying to develop perfect pitch, Rick Beato recommends this, other people recommend it. He's not really the first one to recommend that. It's kind of an old idea. But if you're trying to develop perfect pitch, what they'll tell you to do is try and memorize a song. And then if you can recall that song, you can often recall the starting pitch. So this is a bit of tone awareness. But it's difficult because even though these are all major thirds, what happens to people when they're doing their relative pitch training is the more they do it, the more difficult it becomes to hear that. And one of the results of this is the octave. If you've ever done intensive ear training, that octave is often the first thing that you're able to just recognize real easily. But the more ear training you do, the more you lose it, because all of a sudden the octaves, this C and this C, start to take on slightly different colors, even though they're both technically the same note. And so what I'm getting at with this is that we have to train the tone awareness in our relative pitch courses, because otherwise we start to get confused when keys change. So I'm going to continue to work on these things. I'm going to continue to work on perfect pitch and relative pitch. I'm not going to do any live streams for a little while here because I can get a better quality video if I just record it ahead of time and then post it. We don't have to deal with internet issues and technical issues, things like that. But you can catch my videos on Tuesdays and Fridays right now at 12:30 p.m. That's when they're going to be released, a specific standard time. And of course, you can watch them anytime after that. So I hope you enjoyed this little excursion into perfect pitch, and it's not the end of it. I'm going to continue to see if it can be developed, but that will be all for today. And I will see you next time. So there will be a video posted tomorrow at 12:30. We're talking about audiation tomorrow, so that'll be fun. And not only that, you can actually stream these videos, the ones that I'm posting on Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm going to start just putting them on my podcast as well. So you can get it on Apple iTunes, Spotify. Just go to, let me get the actual link for you. And I will go ahead and post a link in the description as well. Okay, so it's podcast.UreMusic.com. So you can go there. If you are using an RLS, you can type in feed.xml at the end of that. So I'm going to go ahead and post a link in the description, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions, or let me know if you've had any observations. Has anything changed for you? It hasn't really changed for me. I think partially because I can't actually just sit here and play around and focus. I'm teaching, and it's something that I talk about a lot. When you're teaching something, you're invested in trying to explain things. And so you don't necessarily learn when you teach. You learn from student questions because they always ask you things you hadn't thought of, but you don't necessarily learn the concepts you're teaching. You have to already know them. And so with the perfect pitch thing, since it's experimental, I was actively teaching all this. So now I'm going to have to take some time and just kind of do it on my own. And I'll let you know how it goes. All right, I'll see you next time.